We're going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice long
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad. How is it going out there? Make sure to like and subscribe if you're out there on YouTube. And also rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. We are live Saturday night, but I was like, you know what? I could record this normal or go live and just kind of break down the whole free agency frenzy right now. Just who should the Bears be picking up in free agency? Because the Bears have estimated around $45 million in cap space, and we still have a couple holes that we have to fill inside of free agency, like that I would prefer we fill in free agency first so that we can then head into the draft, and then we can then draft best player available and just kind of make the roster better so that we can grow with a younger team rather than just getting all these veterans. We can build better and better through the draft. So how's everyone doing? We got Hype Rider out there. We got Hermetic out there. Perfect. Awesome. What is going on, everybody? So let's get this show on the road. So before we start getting into the individual positions, I want to just first talk a little bit about just overall where the Bears are at, because like I said before, $45 million in cap space is what they have right now. And when you look at their roster, so I put together a depth chart for those out there on YouTube so you can kind of see what we're dealing with and what we're really seeing. I highlighted green as new additions and yellow as people that are technically new starters, which would be Ryan Bates at center, because right now he's technically your center, unless you backup guard or anything like that, which that will change on Monday. But I wanted to just throw him in there because he is technically the best person out there. And then also Tyler Scott as your slot receiver right now, because you look at the backups, Maurice Alexander, John Jackson, Samari Toure at the wide receiver position. Those are your backups that you have out there. And then if we flip over to the defense, really the only starter that you didn't have last season is right now Austin Booker, Dominique Robinson at that right defensive end spot. So really the prime positions that we're going to be talking about today: centers, offensive tackles, defensive ends, defensive tackles, wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends. Now the Bears still might sign a safety, a linebacker, just to try to bring them into the Dennis Allen system, because you also look at the linebackers. Amen Agbangbamiga is still someone that we just signed. Noah Sewell, and then Carl Jones Jr. So maybe we add someone, or my guess, probably in the draft. But also too, Paulson and Debo is someone who's very, very familiar with Dennis Allen. I still don't think that they would just bring him in to overtake Tyreek Stevenson, because I think really that's the only way that they would bring in a corner. They might just, because I can't see them trying to overtake Tyreek Stevenson. And then at the safety position as well, we're pretty set. Elijah Hicks, Jonathan Owens as backups, but that's where I feel more so in the draft rather than in free agency. So let's see. Got Romy out there. We got Victor. We got J2K. What's good, everyone? I'm seeing a lot of Drew stuff out there. Drew Dalman as kind of the big one. So we'll definitely talk about that and break it down, because let's get right into the center, shall we? Because center position, to me, is the biggest hole when you look at it right now. Ryan Bates is technically your starting center, with Ricky Stromberg, a former Detroit Lion, as the backup, and then Chris Glazer. Never heard of him, and that's why just one of those random additions that we had off the practice squad, end of season signing. Also too, with the $45 million that the Bears have in estimated cap space, I also want to call out something with that number as well. And that is also that the Bears have 53 men on their roster right now. So what that means is it means every person that they sign, technically think of it like you save an extra $1 million, because you're only going to have 53 men on the roster. So because of that, you're ticking off you're getting rid of those worst players that you have on. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't make a huge difference, but it is something that at least just helps with some of the math that goes on with this. So let's get into the center position and break this down, because to me, there's really 4 people that I'm looking at this center position. And it's not because it's not super important. It's because there's only about 4 people out there. And the 4 people that I'm talking about is Drew Dalman from the Atlanta Falcons, Ryan Kelly from the Colts, Coleman Shelton as the number 3 center out there, and also Evan Brown. Also, I do know that people have brought up Josh Myers from Green Bay. Here's the thing. I want to get good at this position. Josh Myers, not a good center. Also, same thing with Bradley Bozeman. I like Bradley Bozeman. He's about 30 years old. And that's another person who's just solid. But I think it's going to come down to one of these 4 players. That's what it's going to boil down to. I think Coleman Shelton has the least of a shot at the Bears position for center, because I really do think it's probably Drew Dalman, Ryan Kelly, or Evan Brown. Also, big shout out to PFF, because I was spending a lot of time on my little depth chart, because no one actually has an active depth chart out there online. So I just copied and pasted the PFF numbers out there. If you haven't already, grab a subscription. Their data is awesome. So I'm using PFF's data when it comes down to, and actually PFF is grabbing it from Over the Cap, but all their salaries. So if you don't agree with the salaries, you can go to them. But let's go into this, because I want to talk about Drew Dalman, because I'm not trying to be negative about Drew Dalman. Drew Dalman is PFF's 4th highest graded center this year, 3rd highest graded center last year. But I do want to just clarify who Drew Dalman is. Drew Dalman is a run blocking lead block center. He is the person that's going to pave the way in the running game. So if the Bears want someone who's one of the best run blockers at the position, if not the best run blocker at that center position, that's what Drew Dalman does. He is not an absolute freak. He's not great at blocking for pass pro. And a great way to explain this is that, first off, he had 17 penalties over the last 3 seasons. For reference, Ryan Kelly had 7 during that time. Shelton and Evan Brown both had 15, right? It's not great. But then also, too, when you look at their pass blocking efficiency grade, Drew Dalman had 97.8 last year. Ryan Kelly last year, 98. And Ryan Kelly's has been 98, 99.2, 97.7. For reference, Coleman Shelton last season was pretty much the same as Drew Dalman with pass block efficiency rate, which basically is your percentage of pass blocking snaps without giving up a pressure. Coleman Shelton, 97.9, Drew Dalman, 97.8. What I'm getting at is just Drew Dalman is not this crazy pass pro, but he can set the tone in the run. Also, he is a center, so another good stuff. But what he's projected to get is around $14 million a year, which I think that's going to get higher. I think that's just going to be increased because of just the scarcity of the position in the draft and in free agency. If I'm guessing, I think he's going to get to more so that $16 million range. So I see some people out there too in the chat saying, yeah, 16, maybe, right? Because I think 16, it's not that bad when you're talking about an upper tier offensive lineman. Yet again, even though that I was just saying how Drew Dalman, not this pass blocking specialist, he has gotten better every season. He's only 26 years old too, so this could be someone, if you do 4 years, $56 million, or let's just say $60 million, just to kind of keep it a round number, that's not that bad for an offensive lineman to be on your team. And I do think that what the Bears are trying to do is they're trying to establish that run. Now, the next piece that I want to just talk about too, because Romy perfectly has an amazing transition for me. This is the thing. Next person is Ryan Kelly, who is projected to get 2 years, $9.5 million a year. And Ryan Kelly has been just a phenomenal center throughout, or just good, like a very good center throughout his career. Nothing amazing, nothing outstanding. And if you look at his grades, he's just a good run blocker and pass blocker, good leader out there. Like I said, he's going to be 32 years old. But the biggest question is he's been looking at retirement. So does that kind of scare you away a little bit? I love that he's been the leader of the Indianapolis Colts team, or offensive line, someone that you want to have out there. But something strikes me about someone that might want to retire at that center position. I think he's a very good fit because he can kind of do it all. But I still feel like the Bears overall want to get that run game going with Drew Dalman. But then the next thing, because also I see Jason out there saying Drew will get 17. He could. I really do think, because what the highest paid center is at 18 million. I think he's going to look at this, and I guarantee you he's going to take a little screenshot of his PFF grade saying, I'm the fourth best center, third best center. I'm a top 5 center. I need to be the top paid center. So that's why I think that he wants to be out there. So the next person is then Evan Brown. I think that Evan Brown probably would be their third option, because I think that the big question, what does Ryan Kelly want to be there for a couple of years? Then you can at least draft a center. You know that you have a good center in place. But Evan Brown, the reason why he's been coming up more and more and more, first off, you hit the projected salary, 2 years, 5.5 a year. He's only 28 years old. And this is someone who was starting at center and right guard for the Detroit Lions under Ben Johnson. Or Ragnow and everything like that, Evan Brown was one of the starters. Now, Evan Brown is not an amazing player. He's someone that is familiar with the system. He's familiar with the scheme. PFF's 30th highest graded guard last season. But when he was a center, he had a 55.5 grade. That's the thing that gets me nervous, because I feel if this is the scenario, I want to just kind of paint this. In the center scenario, if you do not get Drew Dalman and Ryan Kelly, you feel like he's not going to be there, you need to draft Gray Zabel. You need to draft the center out of Georgia. You need to draft somebody a little bit higher in hopes that they can be that center. Because yet again, if you bring in these guards and still have your tackles, that center is that quarterback of the offensive line. Yes, you have an all-pro left guard now, but still that center is such a key piece and such a big focal point for how this team works. And that is the biggest piece that you have to make sure they get. And I think that's why the Bears are just opening up their checkbooks to Dalman, because we just went through the best options at the center position for free agency, not named Coleman Shelton, right? And I still feel like most of us, myself included, I don't want to roll back out with Coleman Shelton. It seems like, hey, this was fun. It was a 1-year type of thing, and see you later, right? Just for me, like, with all that being said, Dalman is still the best option. Dalman is who I hope that they get. Even though that I said like the stuff about the pass blocking, I still feel like he can get better at that pass blocking situation. And he's just someone that can help solidify the offensive line. I am tired of this Bears offensive line not knowing where the other person next to them is going to be. I think that they're going to open up the bag. I think that they're going to pay him. I think he's going to be the first deal that the Bears get done. Might even be the first deal overall, because I just feel the Bears are going to be like, all right, see what we did at the guard spots? Come here. We have an option for it. So I think that is what is going on. But let's see what you all say out there in the comments. I got Philip, what's good? Yeah, keep building those trenches. Agreed. J2K saying Evan Brown was a much better pass blocker. That is true. Better pass blocker. That's the thing that I'm kind of looking at as well, is like, do they want more of these run, like these graders? Because it does. The big thing is they want to establish that run for sure. So, Hypewriter, is re-signing Shelton as a backup viable? True. That, I mean, it would be viable. I don't mind that at all. J2K saying, but yeah, I just don't think that he's going to, right? Because he's been a good, like I've always said, he's just that center, just that, like, the year before he went to the Bears, he was the number 17th center. And it's like, that's always what he feels like. He just feels solid. And Victor saying, doesn't think Kelly's mulling retirement. Yeah, said he was excited to see what's out there in free agency. I did not see that. So if he's excited about that, awesome. And then J2K saying Titans signed Cushenberry last year to big money. He sucked. Don't overpay for average, let alone bad. Agreed. I think people just wanted Cushenberry because he had like a halfway decent one season. And then, yeah, everyone went crazy with him last year. Even with that, I was like, I know we need a center, but it's like, yeah, Dalman at least. The big question, I think, especially with the running, if they think that he's going to be a good fit in their system, then perfect. Because if they don't, his one strength, which is the run blocking, he won't be able to get that. So, yeah. Romy's saying we're never going to get our center, are we? Bears junkie out there too. What's good? Yeah, so let's keep going. Let's keep on going. Let's head over to the offensive tackles, where I was actually going to talk about Ronnie Stanley and I was going to ask you, do you think that the Bears are going to sign Ronnie Stanley? I just checked my phone, and Ronnie Stanley just got signed. So with Ronnie Stanley not there, there's only one offensive tackle we got to talk about, and that is Dan Skipper. So the reason why I want to bring up Dan Skipper's not a great tackle, but he is someone that the Bears might want to sign because I've heard just a very good locker room guy. He's 30 years old, looks like he's about 60. But Dan Skipper, yeah, he looks older than all the coaches we just hired. But Dan Skipper is someone, all jokes aside, he's someone that Ben Johnson seemingly really, really likes and might want to have as this swing tackle on the back, because we're going to get rid of Larry Borum. We're not going to re-sign him. And Karan Amagaji, I still feel like there's going to be a little bit of a question there, because do you trust him as that backup tackle? Now, don't get me wrong, Dan Skipper is no savior at the swing tackle position, but if they think that he's going to be a good person in the locker room, that might just be a signing that we see. All right, if it happens, I'm not going to be jumping for joy, but I just want to call that out as something to just be on the lookout for if the Bears end up picking up Dan Skipper. Now, the reason why I wanted to just call out offensive tackles is because we can definitely upgrade from Braxton Jones, but this is the reason why Braxton Jones has just kind of stayed on the team. Because when you look at the people that are available, it's Cam Robinson, Dan Moore, Morgan Moses, who's more of a right tackle, and Jedrick Wills, more of a right tackle as well. Are any of those, can you confidently say, is better than what you have with Braxton? For the money that you would have to give them as well, because Cam Robinson, you'd have to get close to $20 million a year to pay for him. Are you really getting that much better production? The answer is no. The answer is no. And if you think the answer is yes, I don't know what you have against Braxton Jones, because he's not for $1 million a year that you're paying for him, that's a way better deal than close to 20 if you try to get Cam Robinson, or 15 if you're trying to get Dan Moore. It just doesn't make sense. The only person that I actually want to bring up is Tyron Smith if they want to bring him in. He's been awfully banged up, which isn't that bad, especially if you have Braxton Jones as a backup. So that is at least an option. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but I just wanted to call out the offensive tackle position just because it has been something that we can upgrade on. We also have only 1 year left on Braxton Jones's deal. Yet again, that's why I love the idea of looking for an offensive tackle that we can draft, have him sit a year, and now you have Karan Amagaji and this person that you just picked up that has a year to develop, and then you can say at the end of the year, do I think one of these people is going to take Braxton's job, or maybe he takes a step with Rashar as the offensive line coach. So let's see. Yeah, and Bears Chunky, you took the words right out of my mouth. I'm also interested with how Braxton looks with the real coach, right? Like that, I'm very, very, very excited to see that. But yeah, and then Hype Rider, yeah, the whole thing is who's better. That's the biggest thing. It's who is a true upgrade? Because if you're going to spend the money, if you're going to spend and invest at the position, you need an upgrade. And you just don't see it, especially for the price. I'd rather take that $17 million, $18 million and spend it on one of these guys. The defensive ends. Let's talk defensive ends, because the talk of the town has been Trey Hendrickson. I'm curious, chat, because we're live. Would you get Trey Hendrickson? Are you feeling that this is going to happen? Would you do this? Because Trey Hendrickson, the rumor is he might just go for a day 2 pick, second or third. To me, I love the idea of getting rid of that 3rd round pick, because the Bears have not had a great track record with their 3rd round picks. Also, I still like where that 3rd round pick is, because I see some wide receivers, tight ends that the Bears might be eyeing up. My favorite trade proposal that I've seen. Would this happen? I haven't seen anything like this, but this would be lovely if the Bears move from 10 to 17 and then move back from 72 to 81. So basically do a pick swap with the Bengals and acquire Trey Hendrickson, because that's around a 3rd round pick, one of those day 2 picks. Personally, I would love that, because if the Bears are at pick 17 and pick 81's not that bad in the 3rd round, but that pick 17, maybe you see a tackle fall to you, or Josh Simmons. Maybe it's more palatable to get one of those other tackles that isn't, one of those true tackles that you can actually have out there as left tackle. So I don't mind that at all. I think that would be great. Trey Hendrickson is also, if he was traded, would only be a $16 million cap hit, but like I mentioned too, is probably going to be looking for an extension, or will be looking for an extension. He's actually already negotiating with people, and it would be up close to that $30 million a year is what is expected. So that is going to be the big question mark. I like it. If they can make it happen, by all means, right? This is one of the best pass rushers that's out there. Not a great run stopper, but not bad by any stretch of the imagination. One of the best defensive ends in the league. And if you can pair him next to Montez Sweat, I love that. Or opposite Montez Sweat, that's really good. That's incredible. And then now defensive line is set. You're still going to be trying to add in the draft, right? Don't just let the foot off the gas because your starting lineup looks good. Add the depth. So that is going to be one of the biggest pieces I think that the Bears are going to be looking at. But I feel like a lot of people are going to be waiting till after the free agency in order for him to get moved, because of all the different defensive ends that are out there. And if the Bears are looking to make a move at defensive end, I just added 4 people that I think could potentially be good fits. Starting with number 1, Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack, is he going to return? Would we still love him to be back? He's 34 years old, so coming down the prime from his career, and you start to see defensive ends start to decline a little bit. They can still play till they're around 36 or so. So you're looking at like a 2-year projected $22.5 million a year. So little pricey with that, but if you're paying Trey Hendrickson a lot more, also Trey Hendrickson is only 30. So that's some of the things where I like it. I love it on paper because I want to see Mack back. 22.5 is a little bit pricey, but I would love to see him back. But also too, I still go back to this. Why would he come back? Ryan Poles, like sitting in a negotiation room with Ryan Poles, the guy that his first move was to get you out. That's where I just don't see it. I don't see it, but man, if everything's good, it's all water under the bridge and he just wants to come back and play for the Bears, I would love it. I'd love it. For the right price, obviously. If we could get slightly below 20, awesome. But yeah, 22.5 is a little much, but what I like about that is he'll at least solidify the side. I still feel like you could then draft a defensive end. You definitely want to draft like a defensive end, bring one of those guys in. But man, this defense would just be really good. You're talking about 2 of the best run defenders on those edges. I like the idea. I like the idea, right? But yeah, I see Philip saying too, yeah, he also gets hurt. He's been banged up a little bit, only played 660 snaps. I've also heard that he also really just wants to start transitioning to a pass rush role, which yet again, if you do that, you're not going to be getting your 22.5. So that's something that I just want to bring that up. But let's see what we have out there. We got Broski. What is good, my friend? Hope you're doing well. Cornelius, how's it going? Yeah, he wants to bring back Mack and keep draft capital. That's the thing too. Because if it's I think that's where, if I'm the Bears, I maybe don't make that move yet. Because then we go to the next free agent, Josh Sweat, projected to get 3 years, $18 million a year. I think he's going to get in the 20s. I think that's a little bit of a conservative guess just because of what he was able to do. Everyone's always saying, what have you done for me lately? Well, he just won a Super Bowl. And he just got 2.5 sacks in the Super Bowl. He was running amok out there. I think that he's also someone that the Bears might want to get because of his size. He's a lot bigger than what a lot of people think. And when you look at what Dennis Allen has had at the defensive end spot, Josh Sweat kind of fits that mold. He likes people around 270, the Payton Turners, let me grab this other name, Marcus Davenport's, those bigger defensive ends. That's why I think Josh Sweat could be someone that they want to put out there, and you have to shift him over to that right end, opposite Sweat, so that you have the two Sweats on the outside. That might be a play, but yet again, only 28 years old. I do have a concern with the amount of money that he might command, though. Still a very good player, but nothing elite. You look at his PFF grades too. He's 30th, 36. The number's a little small from his grade last season, and 56 in 2023. So Sweat, good player, but we'll see what they end up doing. I think that could be a good longer term play. But for me, I still want to draft a defensive. I want to draft a defensive end. I think there's some good ones that they can get later, especially in the second round, that we could potentially develop. That's why I don't mind if we want to bring back Mack. I think it'll also bring a little extra vibe to this defense as well. If you bring Mack, if you bring in Sweat, I think it'll be like, oh, cool. If you bring back Mack, I think that people are going to be really excited about that. But next, I wanted to talk about this. And actually, before I go in there, Damond, perfect. Saying Josh Sweat has always flourished with a lot of good talent around him on the defensive line. That's a good point, right? What happens when you're not the guy, when you're not surrounded by all those great defensive tackles and other things like that? But the next person I want to bring up is Chase Young. 2 years, $17.5 million a year. And this is when I go, ugh, man. So here's the thing. I remember last year when we had Chase Young and we talked about Chase Young. And I remember watching the tape. I watched him before, and I watched a little bit of him this year too. Chase Young still plays like a player that had a bad knee injury. And what I mean by that is he doesn't really anchor against the run well. And I see all the stats out there about how many pressures he's gotten, how many sacks he's gotten. He is still a pass rush guy. He's still good at that, right? He's not this elite player or anything like that. Still a really, really good pass rush specialist. But how much are you going to be paying someone for that? And the reason why I also don't love it necessarily is a lot of people that are coming out, typically, as rookies, you want them to be more of your pass rush specialist because you just say, hey, pin your ears back, go after the quarterback, go do that, right? Just go do this one singular thing. That's what I'm going to task you at doing. So go do it. That's where, to me, if the Bears were to bring in Chase Young, you know that Dennis Allen sees something in him, which you're just going to have to trust the coach. I just don't like seeing that $17.5 million right next to him when I don't have confidence that he can truly stop the run and be someone that plays up to that $17.5 million. It's not like Trey Hendrickson. Hendrickson is a better pass rusher and also a better run defender. I come at it twice the cost, though, and also a draft pick. But really, that's the thing that gets me a little bit nervous when we start talking about Chase Young as a defensive end to bring in. So that's my biggest piece, because he's more, he's a pass rush specialist, not an every down starter. If actually, I just looked at the comments. Yeah, Damon and I were on the same page. Like, yeah, he's not really, when you think about him, he's not going to be your starter. He's a specialist. He still played over 700 snaps last year, close to 900 the year before. Just that every down mentality. That's the only thing that gets me nervous about it. But the next and last player that I want to just preview, I have other people I'll talk about too at the defensive end spot, but someone who I think is, because this is what happens when you get a pass rush specialist. To me, Derek Barnett, 1 year, 4.25. That's right, 4.25 million projected. This is someone with a 74.2 grade last season for Houston, or an 82.4 the year before. He's just someone that has been good. You could put him in pass rushing situations. He's been a sound player, and for around 4 million, that ain't bad at all. Like, and that's what I'm talking about when you're seeking out those pass rush specialists, getting those lesser deals out there, so then you can spend money on other people and now you can bring in a better defensive tackle. Now you can bring in, a better wide receiver, running back, whatever you want to do. you can spend your money on other spots and maybe even bring in another defensive end as well, right? You can do other things like that. Because bringing in Derek Barnett doesn't mean that he's going to be your starter. I see him more as like, okay, now you added some depth. Now Austin Booker, now you can get rid of Dominique Robinson. Booker can be one of your backups. You would still need a starter, so you definitely, that's going to be a higher priority then if you're only bringing in like a Barnett. But that's why I wanted to bring up Derek Barnett. Just a good player out there. But last little bits, the people that aren't on my list that I didn't throw out there, Dayo Odeyingbo from the Indianapolis Colts. He was banged up in the pre-draft. He had like an Achilles tear when he was coming out in the draft. But 4 years later, has gotten better and better and better. He's projected to get around $16.5 million. That to me, like, I could be dead wrong with this, but it just seems like that's one of those players that is getting a big bag and then is going to be cut in like a year or two. That's just the vibe that it gets. Like, that's kind of how I felt with Draymond Jones before as well. Like 2 years ago, just didn't really like see the hype with a lot of that. Like, I saw a lot of people really, really wanting him. The price was just a little high. Odeyingbo, similar thing. Other people too at the defensive end spot, Joey Bosa, someone who as soon as you see him get released, you're like, dude, Joey Bosa's available? And then you see him and you're like, oh, he's always injured. Like, he is always injured, always banged up, and he just has not been the same Joey Bosa. So for him especially, I'm not paying him more than $10 million. He's not, or like maybe around $10 million, but Joey Bosa has not been the same Bosa that we saw before. Also, Harold Landry. I've always just not been a huge Harold Landry person, just because I think that the stats are better than what he actually performs as. I think he's solid, but yet again, what is he going to be commanding? What is he going to be asking? And the last little bit that I wanted to call out too, Matthew Judon. Bears were trying to get him last season. It was awful last season. Maybe he just goes back to the Patriots, or maybe the Bears look at him and go, hey, we had interest in you last year. You saw Hard Knocks. Do you want to come here? And right now he's projected $4.5 million. Big risk with that, but hey, it's going to be all about the guarantees. Yet again, I think he's like 32 years old, so a little bit older. Other players too, Malcom Koonce, Haason Reddick, not really for me, but they're still out there, still available. Koonce is coming off of a season-ending injury last season. That's where I'm like, no, thank you. And then Haason Reddick as well, just someone a little undersized. Big questions with what was going on with like the Jets and everything like that. And then Payton Turner, formerly with Dennis Allen, just someone who's not great, but might be someone that he just wants to bring over as well. So let's see what is out there with that. So yeah, Judon would be a 1-year deal. Yeah, let's see people out there with Landry. Yep. Bosa banged up. Yep. And yeah, I love Khalil Mack. I love the idea of him being out there. Also, Shy Drax, what's good, my friend? How you been? Hope you're having a good weekend. And then also Victor saying too, why not keep Darrell Taylor? Yeah, that's another option too. Now the only thing is then I don't think he got a sack afterwards, but I still like him as, I think it's all up to, do the Bears want him as the defensive end, right? What does the defensive coordinator think about that? But yeah, bring him back for a year, anything like that. Just to me, it's especially with like defensive ends, defensive tackles. We talk about this, right? They get swapped out. Just because we add someone, right? Ryan Poles, keep adding. There's very good defensive ends that are out here. I think James Pierce Jr. is going to be one of those that he's probably going to end up dropping to the Eagles. Just watch, book it, right? Because James Pierce, I just listened to an interview with him. I hate saying this, but it's like, yeah, listening to him, I go, yeah, I kind of don't want him to. I love James Pierce's tape. I love James Pierce. But after listening to him talk and like answer interview questions, you're like, this guy just doesn't seem interested in anything. Not like Justin Fields, where he never seemed interested in things, where you're like, okay, at least I know Justin kind of cares. James Pierce, hearing him talk, you go, I don't think he wants to play football. Like, the vibe of him was not great. Yeah, it was a character concern that might have him drop. But But yeah, let's see. Yeah, Shadrack's overpaying is gross indeed. Love it. So let's go over to defensive tackles, because we've already talked about all this money we can spend on centers, all this money we can spend on defensive ends. But D tackles also is one of those positions where there's a lot of people that we can add, a lot of people that. So let's actually first, let's go over to the depth chart, because this is something where we have Gervon Dexter and Andrew Billings coming off of an injury, and then backups, Zach Pickens, and we just re-signed Chris Williams. And right there, you kind of have your four set. Now, the big question that I have is, first off, how healthy is Andrew Billings? He's 30 years old. I like him as a backup. I like him as that role player, right? We all love Big Bill. We all know that he was someone that instantly Ben Johnson's like, yeah, this guy's good. But when you look at the backups, if one of those gets injured, this is what we had last season, where Byron Cowart had to start. He's a backup. He's a borderline practice squad player that was starting. Zach Pickens hasn't been that great. Do I expect him to take a step? No, not really, right? I have more belief in Karan Amagaji because of he's been banged up. He had a quad injury, and he couldn't do squats because he had a quad injury, right? And I think that Karan Amagaji can still be something. Zach Pickens, I don't have a lot of hope, because you just really didn't see any steps, right? You didn't see any progression. He just looked like the same person. And Chris Williams, I think he showed flashes, but you do need depth at that defensive tackle spot. So this is where I think that D tackle is probably one of the most interesting positions that we have, because right now Billings is only making $3 million, where if you put him as a backup, as that role player, right? Not saying that all of a sudden his snaps are gone, but you have a nice defensive tackle rotation and you bring in someone that's really good. I love that, because now you're stout up the middle, because we just simply weren't that. Because right in Madden, you don't sub any of these guys out. But in the real world, you have to sub these people out. So that's why defensive tackle to me is someone to at least look at. And to start the conversation off, we have to talk about Jonathan Allen, who was released by the Commanders. This is someone that there has always been a lot of rumors with the Bears potentially wanting to get him with the Commanders. So, and because the Commanders were trying to ship him off, the Bears needed a D tackle. And really, since they shipped off Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen has not done anything. His PFF grade has been below 60 for the past 2 seasons. Before that, the dude was one of the best D tackles out there. He just has really struggled ever since that has happened. And it's attitude, maybe it's some injuries a little bit as well. He was banged up last season. But that's where I get a little bit curious about, okay, Jonathan Allen, have you already peaked? Are you now banged up? Is this attitude going to come over wherever you come? And if I sign you, are you going to give me this Pro Bowl level, this Pro Bowl caliber D tackle play? Because when he's out there, like in 2022, this dude was one of the best people out there. This is one of the best D tackles. He was one of the most underrated people out there. But this is someone that was he was very, very banged up, very dinged up a lot. So he's definitely someone that I just want to keep an eye out for, but there's no exact salary cap numbers that are out there. My guess, this is my personal guess, he was making $18 million a year last season. I think he's going to be making less than that just because of his production did fall off, like I said, the last 2 seasons. So I think he's maybe going to get in that 18 to $10 million type of range, maybe like in like 15 or something, might be the sweet spot. Maybe just wants to do a 1-year prove it deal. So that's where I wanted to at least just throw him out there as someone that the Bears might be eyeing up, someone who could be a big boom, like, hey, we'll bring you in for a year, see what you can do. You get to play next to Montez Sweat again, and maybe it becomes a good relationship that's out there as well. So now, but yet again, I see Victor out there. The big thing is health and attitude. So you could sign him, and yeah, I'm not signing him for anything more than 1 year. But now let's talk about the other D tackles out there. These are the higher priced D tackles, put a little asterisk next to this. that there's Milton Williams projected to get $21 million a year. This is Philly's defensive tackle that's been inside of this rotation that they've had with Davis and everyone like that. And he was great. He was phenomenal. PFF's 14th highest graded defensive tackle, only 26 years old. So you're talking about someone young you can bring in, and this guy's been a beast. But my whole question with this is the $21 million a year, right? Do I really want to spend that for a starting D tackle? Because we have $45 million available. You want to keep at least 10 when you're kind of in the season, and maybe about like 7 million will probably go out to some of your draft picks, when all is said and done. So when you're talking about this, you're probably going to spend, maybe I'll just say $30 million. So if you're spending that much on Milton Williams, maybe you're not getting Drew Dalman, or you're bringing in someone else. That's why I kind of just like pump the brakes a little bit with Milton Williams. I'd rather get a defensive end than invest that much at that D tackle spot. So that is because when you look at the depth chart, that's where it's such a big hole. That's where I don't think that the Bears are going to be in on Milton Williams. I know people want him, and I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying that I think that where their money's going is not going to be where Milton Williams is. But let's talk a little bit more about other defensive tackles that are available. BJ Hill is the next most expensive at 2 years, 10.25. I don't think that they would be looking to spend something like that, but he's been just a solid just defensive tackle throughout his career. He's going to be 30 years old. But someone who I'm looking at is Levi Onwuzurike, the defensive tackle formerly of the Detroit Lions, 27 years old, projected to get 2 years, $8.25 million a year. He's someone that can penetrate. He can be that 3 technique that the Bears need, and for a pretty decent deal. Also, he was PFF's 25th highest graded defensive tackle, and obviously the Ben Johnson connection. That's what I'm kind of leaning on with this projection as well, because he's also playing alongside Aleem McNeil, one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. So definitely has kind of benefited from that. But he is someone that is still solid. Wanted to just at least shout him out as a sub $10 million option at the defensive tackle spot. And one thing that I want to call out as well is just his injury history. That is probably the biggest thing that is going to be scaring some teams off. Also, why he's kind of projected this lower salary, because 2 years ago, big time injury, was out for most of the season. The season before that, in 2023, he was only played 164 snaps because of injury. So injuries have been a big question, but when he was healthy last season, looked good. That's going to be the question mark for the Bears. Do they want to take a risk on Levi? And next, Jarran Reed, just a good, solid 32-year-old defensive tackle you could potentially bring in at 1 year, $6 million. That's why I kind of like these bargain bins. Jarran Reed at 1 year, $6 million, PFF's 21st highest graded defensive tackle. And then also when you look farther down the line, Poona Ford, love him. He was actually PFF's 5th highest graded defensive tackle. Now, I don't expect him to give you that type of production, but he's just been a good D tackle. Taylor Tart, same thing. At Poona Ford, projected $3.5 million on a 1 year deal. Taylor Tart, $2.5 on a 1 year deal. Or Sebastian Joseph Day, $3.75 on a 1 year deal. So, Joseph Day, he's 30 years old. PFF's 23rd highest graded D tackle. I like these guys that are all on the list, because this is the one that I think that the Bears should kind of lean towards. Add some depth, add a good player, someone that can be better than like a Zach Pickens or Chris Williams as well. Just get better backups. Just get good, sound football players so that you just have that better defensive tackle rotation, because that seemed to be the killer at that defensive tackle spot, was just lack of depth. So when one goes down, there's no one else back there. So everybody just kind of falls off with that. The only other thing that I want to bring up is everybody wants this guy. If you don't, come on. Calais Campbell, he's projected 1 year, $3 million. and he's the ageless wonder. He's going to be 39 during the season, and PFF's 6th highest graded defensive tackle. Before that, 23rd highest graded defensive tackle. He's just so good everywhere he goes. Now, eventually, he's going to fall off, and he's not going to be great, but this is someone that could play 3 tech, play the 5 tech. He can play all over your defensive line, and he's cheap, should be good. Great leader out there. Walter Payton, Man of the Year award winner, I believe so too. Just someone that is just a great person to have in the locker room. He's trying to chase the championship and maybe sees everything that's going on. I would love that. I would absolutely love that. I would love to see him as, to me, Calais Campbell is the ultimate depth piece if you want to add someone like that. If he's willing, then yeah, you should just go, yes, of course, come this way. We like good players. And hey, if it's the one year that Father Time decides to catch up to Calais Campbell, so be it. It's just $3 million. So that's something that I feel that they're going to be doing, or like that's someone that I wish that they could potentially get. So like we said with the defensive tackle spot, just wrapping it up, there's a lot of options. And this has been great because the past 2 seasons, the Bears really haven't had any options in the free agent market at D tackle without completely breaking the bank. Now, Milton Williams, like I said, I don't expect that, but there's still a lot of other D tackles that they could potentially, depending on what they want. Do they just want a depth piece? Do they want someone to basically start over Billings, and then Billings is more of that true role player depth piece on your defensive line? Yet again, rotate them out. It's not about who's starting. It's just about who, when people are taking 400 reps, 500 reps, who are the people that are out there to get the best people out there. So that's the main pieces that are out there. I wanted to just talk a little bit about some of the auxiliary needs that we do have, one of which is wide receivers, which I definitely feel like the Bears are going to be adding at least one. It's not an amazing wide receiver group, and also don't spend $10+ million on wide receivers. You already have 2 good wide receivers that you want to roll out with. So just kind of add a little bit of depth, but draft some later on. Some of the wide receivers I just want to call out is Keenan Allen. First off, Keenan Allen, I wanted to just call him out. I don't think he's going to be back. He's a pending free agent. The Bears want someone fast. Also, Ben Johnson likes to run with 2 tight ends out there. So I feel like that's what he's going to be trying to do. It doesn't make sense to bring back Keenan Allen because he's probably going to want a lot of money. Also, they want speed. They enjoy speed on this team, or for the most part, right? Some other players too. Tim Patrick and Allen Robinson are 2 players that were formerly Detroit Lions that might be interested in moving over. But yet again, both of them kind of up there in age, around 31, 32, bowling retirement. Don't see Allen Robinson coming here anytime soon, but Tim Patrick is someone that I know a lot of people have kind of circled as he could give you some good depth, knows the system, but he's, like I said, borderline retirement, debating on that. Other players too, if they want to get some speed, if that's what they really want to, if that's what's desirable for them, Josh Reynolds and DJ Chark. To me, my biggest question with that, sign it at a good, like the whole thing is the dollars. These guys aren't going to be great. These guys aren't, like, you don't need people to be difference makers at wide receiver. You just need solid wide receivers. So look to see if they bring in Tim Patrick, Josh Reynolds, DJ Chark, these previous wide receivers in the Lions system, if they want to bring them in. So we'll see what they end up doing there at the wide receiver position. So let's keep on going. And then we can just kind of recap it, just talk about everything at the very, very end out there as well. But the next person that I want to talk about is the running backs. Because running backs, I think there's only going to be one running back that the Bears kind of look at. Actually, there was another Lions running back that was out there, but Jamal Williams, I wanted to just call out because Jamal Williams is just an absolute character. And if they want to get somebody that is, like, we all know teammates love him. He's also someone that can give you more of that larger build and can pass catch and everything like that. And this is someone too that played with Dennis Allen and also underneath Ben Johnson. So that's why, to me, Jamal Williams is definitely just a question mark if they're going to add anyone. But this is where, too, they're going to draft people. They're going to add someone. And you look at our depth chart for our running backs, DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, and Ian Wheeler coming off that ACL tear. So if they want to add a veteran, I don't think it's mandatory or anything like that. That's why I wanted to just throw Jamal Williams, right? We're at the tail end of the show. I want to just throw out some names, and I'm like, Jamal Williams might just be someone that they give a call. It's not going to be a Monday signing or anything like that, but someone that I could just, if they have interest, he could be someone that they might want to bring in. And last but not least, tight ends. Like I said, the Bears like to, with Ben Johnson, they're probably going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. They signed Durham Smythe, who, to be honest, not great, not solid, he's just meh. And that's where, too, why that 3rd round pick I feel is so important. I feel like that 3rd round pick, the Bears are eyeing up tight ends. That's a sweet spot for like a Mason Taylor out of LSU, a Ferguson out of Oregon. I got it again. I'll get the hang of that, chat. I'll get the hang of pronouncing Oregon a little bit better, but I'm getting there. Then the only other thing too is, like I said, with tight ends, this is a bad group of tight ends. Tight ends also typically go for a lot of money. And I see Juwan Johnson, formerly of the Saints. That is someone that he's projected 10 million. He's just not worth it. So to me, that's the thing. Tight ends, not great. But I feel like they're going to be looking in the draft. They're probably going to sign a tight end though, just like as another backup. But that is someone that I think that they're going to be looking at. So let's go into, I see a lot of draft talk out there. So I wanted to kind of join in and see what everyone else is talking out there. I always post these questions beforehand, but I never revisit them. So I asked chat, what is the biggest need for the Chicago Bears? And 70% of you said center, 25% said defensive end, 3% said defensive tackle, and 2% said left tackle. So I'll just end that poll real quick. But let's see what y'all are talking. Y'all are talking some running backs. Love it. Now, something that I will say also, first off, Ron, what is good, my friend? I just saw you, Taco Man. Jeff, seeing a lot of friendly faces out there. But yeah, let's talk a little draft. I'll probably end this right before an hour just so that we're good. But yeah, let's see. Also, what's good, Kay? Hope you're doing well. So yeah, I think with what the Bears are looking at, because I think if there's a true tackle, I think that's my biggest piece, is because I think a lot of people just want to get a tackle at that 10 spot. Now, the biggest question is, do the Bears think that like Kelvin Banks Jr. is good enough to be that number 10 pick? And that's where I do like the idea, if they're going to get Trey Hendrickson, to trade down, because I think that there's so many good defensive ends in this draft that there's good defensive ends, but how many are worth that number 10 pick, I think, is the big question. Also, too, I was looking at just like the sizes of defensive ends as well. And like I mentioned before, Dennis Allen likes larger defensive ends to play the position, like his Payton Turners, like the starting defensive end for the Saints for like the past God knows how many years. I'm blanking on his name. I don't know if chat can help me out. Cameron Jordan. Never mind. Cameron Jordan. Yet again, he likes big defensive ends. And that's why, like, I think a lot of the smaller scale ones, maybe he's going to be turned off by. But when you look at tackle in the first round, that's where I get a little bit like nervous, because do they see Will Campbell as a tackle? Because to me, the best option is if you get a tackle that can compete against Braxton Jones. That is the thing I think you need to get. And when you look into the second round, you have like Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota, someone that you could get in that second round that could play the tackle position. Also, does like a Josh Connerly drop into the second round that you can bring in. There's other tackles that could be in that second round that you can kind of develop. And I see a lot of people, they talk about the Eagles, where it's like, Eagles, just go line nonstop. The thing that they do is they take good players that drop to them, that are projected to go higher. That's what they did with Cooper DeJean. That's what they did with Quinyon Mitchell. Good players that they just go, oh, you're going to give me Jordan Davis? Cool. I'll pick him up. Like, right? Landon Dickerson, very good center. Yeah, I'll grab him in the second round. Sure, why not? That's what they tend to do. Is it's more so, okay, don't be afraid to pick up offensive linemen, but don't force it. And I think that's going to be the biggest question, because to me, to get someone that can really push Braxton Jones, that's what I'm looking at. And with the running backs too, there's some good ones that you can get in the second round. But I also love the depth of this class. I think that there's a lot of really good running backs you can get. And that, I think that's what's so exciting about the draft, is the draft can be so many, the big thing in the second round is all those first round picks that didn't get picked, and now they're sliding. Now they're sliding into the second. And then that's where, for me, with the Bears, pick those guys up, right? The people that should have gone in the first, try and pick some of those people up there as well. Let's see what people are saying out there. Yeah, lots and lots of great talk out there with the draft. Yeah, Michael Williams was actually one of those. Jeff just brought him up. Michael Williams out of Georgia is someone that really does fit what Dennis Allen has looked at for a defensive end. So Michael Williams might be a Dennis Allen guy. So I need to still do a lot more. I've done a lot of the other defensive ends. Michael Williams, I have not dove too deep into that, but he is someone that kind of checks those. So let's see. But yeah, thank y'all. Monday is going to be crazy, and we will have you covered with all the different players that the Bears will sign. So hopefully we end up getting a good center. Thank you as always. Saturday night. Hope you all have a great day. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a